would it be like to never see colors? To be born without senses, to never taste food or feel human touch? What would it be like to rule alone for centuries until you cannot even remember the names of those you once loved? Love Beyond the Grave tells the story of Simu, the sovereign of spirits, and how she meets a young mortal general who would give her a window into what it is to be alive. The world building in this story can be divided into two parts. There's the mortal realm and there's the spirit realm, or the void. The mortal realm is presented as a kind of historical China where there is an emperor, there is human society with a human war going on. At most, the humans might practice some more grounded martial arts, but the only powers that humans might wield are those given to them by making deals with spirits or members of the Starhaven sect, whose job it is to guard humanity from evil spirits. The spirit realm, or the void, is said to be beneath a supernatural tree in the Eastern Sea, and it's presented as this weird, ghostly city where all spirits reside, ruled over by the sovereign, who enforces laws to protect the mortal realm from the spirits. So spirits in this drama are beings who died with intense obsessions, crossing into this kind of afterlife existence where they are driven by those obsessions. So they're basically ghosts with a strong inclination towards being evil, acting on those obsessive desires that they have. When spirits appear in the mortal realm, it's kind of a little bit creepy and unnatural. Before I go into spoiler analysis of the show, I do want to say to anyone who's wondering if they should watch that, for me, I'm glad I watched this show. This show is worth watching for many great moments and scenes, but especially for Simu herself. This is a character that is truly fascinating. This show is not a perfect watch, but I will list my criticisms shortly, but the good outweighs the bad. Okay, from now on, there will be spoilers. First, I want to praise the technical aspects of the show before going into the story. The cinematography is fantastic. There are many, many incredible shots, both on the battlefield and off it, scenes that present the supernatural. Simu, in particular, gets amazing moments. The camera is often tilting to give her this eerie, commanding presence. The music sometimes is incredible. There's a particular song that plays whenever Simu has this grand entrance, and those sequences they become epic. And those particular instruments just bring out this eerie, supernatural vibe in a way that only those instruments could. Costumes look amazing in this drama, with Simu once again getting the best ones. The special effects look excellent, and they really put effort into moments that look dark and intense. The sets and the special effects come together in some very creative ways, and the void in particular looks very unique and unnatural. I was very impressed with all aspects of the technical parts of the show. Simu herself is a fascinating character, as I said before. Really, even if this story didn't have a romance plot, her story would still be interesting. Usually, for whatever reason, I don't find female leads in C-dramas to be very compelling, but not in this drama. Simu is the best character in the whole show, and she would be the reason why I would recommend for people to watch. This is her backstory. She has a unique existence among spirits because she is, as far as I can remember, the only one who is born a spirit. She has never had the experience of living as a human being. She lacks the 5 senses. As a child, she was raised by loving parents, and they taught her to love the mortal world and to care for mortals. And when they died, Simu inherited the role of sovereign of spirits from her father. But she did have to take the throne by force, slaughtering all the spirits who stood against her. For the next several hundreds of years, she ruled the void, a cold, strict ruler who enforced the laws and kept the evil spirits in check. She was not able to trust anyone and remained alone upon the throne. People who talk about her say that she was a completely different person before she became sovereign. When her parents died, they say it is as if time stopped for her. She became something else. Simu in her identity as the sovereign of spirits is terrifyingly powerful. No one can tell her what to do, and she does not allow anyone to disrespect her. As a born spirit, she does not act like a human being, and even when she is curious about the mortal world, she does not fully understand it. And this is something I absolutely love about this show. They allow Simu to be this inhuman being throughout the whole story. She doesn't act like a human because she doesn't think like one. She is this alien existence seeking to know and understand mortals. And that makes every single scene with her interesting because you're never quite sure what she's going to do or say, and it's so fun to watch her reactions. However, the person she was before she became sovereign is still there underneath. She actually hates being sovereign because it is such a difficult, lonely existence, but the role must be fulfilled, and she is the best ruler that the world has ever seen. But she still has this longing for connection, and she has a lot of curiosity for the human world. And she is very kind. And this dichotomy of who she is at heart and who she has to be to protect the world is so fascinating to watch. And the actress they got for this role, she is perfect. I'd actually seen her before in some other dramas, and in those dramas I did not like the characters that she played. So when I saw that she was in this drama, I actually felt kind of skeptical. I was like, I don't know about this. But no, she blew me away. Absolutely fantastic. I can't imagine anyone else playing this character. Now for the male lead, although the male lead is in some ways overshadowed by the female lead story in this drama, he is still a very well-written and complex character. Duan Xu is the mortal who has the audacity to try and court the sovereign of spirits. His backstory is that he was born to a noble family, and he was kidnapped as a child and held for ransom. His father refused to capitulate to the kidnappers' demands since they were asking for national secrets. His father said, "No, you got the wrong kid," and he put a substitute in his son's place. Duan Xu then, through some different events, ends up in this kind of assassin's guild in the enemy kingdom, where he's put through this brutal training and he struggles to survive. And he does become an assassin and does kill on many missions until one mission in particular causes him to kind of wake up and realize that he needs to get out of there. He escapes and he returns to his country. He swaps back with his substitute and rejoins his family. Then he rises through the ranks until he ends up as a general on the battlefield, fighting against the same enemy kingdom that kept him a prisoner all those years ago. His biggest goal and ambition in his life is to take back the 17 prefectures, this land that was stolen from his country. His personality is very intense. He's also a very intelligent character who is very scheming, and he has a lot of plotting capability. He's kind of mischievous and tricky, and he has very keen senses. He's a very noticing man. He's not above trying to pretend to be pitiful to try and get Simu's attention. And she often calls him Xiao Huli, or Foxy. And he's just a little bit crazy, enough to take big risks. Simu tells him this, and he says that he is a gambler who will often risk it all. And he falls for the female lead first, and in the beginning, it feels a little bit like this hopeless, almost crazy love, like falling for a storm or a force of nature. Because how could she love him back? I like the actor for the male lead. It took me a few episodes to warm up to him, though, and to his expressions, because at the beginning he would smile a lot, and I found it unnerving because I think at the beginning they were not genuine smiles, but later as he becomes more sincere, I started to find him a lot more endearing. The romantic relationship in this show is very interesting because if you strip the sincerity out, it becomes this creepy ghost story of a promising young man with a bright future getting seduced by a female spirit, and she drains his vitality until he dies at an early age. Obviously, when you put the sincerity to one another back in, it is a real, genuine love story, but there's still that underlying sense that this is a relationship that is kind of cursed. The moment that Duan Xu fell for Simu, he was doomed. And his love is very risky. It is truly a gamble for him to try to court the sovereign of spirits. She is an existence that is beyond mortal understanding, and yet he dares to try and win her heart. Simu knows that he has fallen for her, and even if she cares for him back, she refuses to accept him for a long time. Because she thinks long term. If she was to give her heart to him, she would end up losing him when he dies. And this issue of mortality is kind of at the heart of their relationship. At one point, she literally brings him to the graveyard of her lovers. There are 22 graves. And she says, I used to care for this person, but now I can't even remember his name. It's so hardcore. And Duan Xu looks at this, and he still chooses, with his eyes open, to win her heart. And when Simu finally accepts him, you know that she is risking herself and opening herself to inevitable future pain. And the inevitability of his death kind of hangs morbidly over their relationship. She even goes to visit her parents' graves at one point and says, I've decided to bury him next to you. It's very morbid, but I love this. I love that the story is very honest in how it explores a relationship between a mortal person and a supernatural being. And in the end, Duan Xu does die, and there's some other stuff going on at the ending that I'll talk about later, but his death defines why their relationship is special. It was never going to be a normal relationship, but they both chose to take that risk anyway. All right, let's talk about the plot. The first arc begins with Simu on a street of a city that's full of slaughtered corpses. She walks among the dead, unconcerned, and offers a dying man a wish in exchange for letting her feed on his obsession. He asks her to take care of his son, and she grants his wish. The visuals in the scene are fantastic. And then Duan Xu arrives with his army to liberate the city, and Simu sees that he has this special sword, and she becomes curious about him and starts to get close to him to find out why the sword chose him. What follows is a bunch of fun stuff regarding both the male and female leads as they go back and forth. She's trying to figure him out, he's noticing that she's not quite right, and in the meantime, she's caring for this kid. Simu does not care if the male lead dies, and there's a moment where he's fighting for his life on the battlefield, and she literally sits down amongst the battle and plays a dirge for him while the fires burn around her. It's an amazing sequence. But soon, Simu finds out that Duan Xu is her spellbearer. Long ago, somebody told Simu that she would one day meet a mortal who would be able to share senses with her, so she can experience what mortals feel. This makes Duan Xu very special to her, and she works to make a deal with him so that he will exchange those senses with her. She ends up revealing her identity, and he does not immediately trust her. And these episodes continue to be very fun because the male lead is engaged in all this strategy and warfare, and he's also dealing with this creepy supernatural spirit that's following him around. And Simu is trying to get what she wants out of him. Eventually, he comes to the point where he trusts her enough to share a sense, and he shares the sense of touch with her. This sense sharing is surprisingly moving. It is so much fun to watch Simu experience different senses for the very first time, and they write it in a very intelligent way and really take time to let her explore what each sense means. When she gets touch, she goes around and she touches everything. She is so excited. She's just feeling everything. And you really get to see that she didn't understand before what touch was or how it impacts mortals in our daily life. They even have her eat food just to experience the textures. even though she can't actually taste the food. That's so interesting. I love watching her explore senses in this way. And Duan Xu sees her joy, and that is when he first falls for her. Other notable mentions in this arc are some side characters. I really enjoyed Duan Xu's generals and subordinates. The kid that Simu is taking care of is also a really good character, and I've seen him before in a lot of other shows. He's usually just a child in flashbacks, and so getting to see him be a regular side character in the story was really fun. So, Arc 1 is really about Simu getting to know Duan Xu and entering into the mortal world and his experiences. And then Arc 2 is when Duan Xu gets to know Simu and her world. So by the time the second arc begins, Duan Xu has already started to be in love with Simu, but he knows it might be a helpless love. And so he's desperate to find some way to make himself valuable and interesting to her. Simu has to return to the void to take up her duties, and Duan Xu begs to be allowed to follow her. Simu allows it, but she's kind of intending to scare him and drive him away because she knows that he's interested in her. But Duan Xu ends up following her successfully, and he maintains his cheerful attitude, which makes Simu so mad at him. He hangs around in the void, sometimes literally, and he is such a strange presence in the ghost realm, and it kind of feels at this point in the story like he's kind of Simu's pet human. But he is trying very hard to gain her love, and she is fully aware of this, but she is refusing to accept him. It's in this arc that she takes him to the graveyard in order to show him that she really is immortal and that he would just be one of her many lovers in her long life. There are many other good characters in the void, and there's a lot of plot with different spirits and the politics of the ghost realm, and I really enjoy a lot of the characters, in particular Lady Zhang Ai, and again, the effort put in making the void this otherworldly place with different rules is done very, very well. The spirits have interesting styling to make them ghostly, and they act in ways that emphasize their inhuman qualities. And now we come to my first criticism. Yan Ke. Yan Ke is the worst character in the story. His function is basically that of a second male lead, and I find him to be very frustrating and kind of a pathetic character. His identity is the sovereign's right hand, so he's this very powerful, long-lived spirit in the void, and he is Simu's subordinate. He could have been a good character, but I really just think they handled him poorly. First of all, he is not styled in a way that makes him look like a spirit, which I feel is a big mistake. You could copy and paste this man into any costume drama, and he would just look like a generically handsome male lead. That should not be true. He should look and behave like an ancient spirit, whether that be changing his makeup or directing the actor to behave differently, I don't know, but I really wanted him to be visually distinct as a spirit, and he wasn't. He looked and acted like a human, and every time I saw his face, I just got annoyed. And this just really stood out, especially in this drama, because all the other non-human characters are done so well that when he is not done well, it just sticks out. His behavior, too. His behavior is just like any other jealous, petty second male lead in every other bad C-drama, and he just should not have been like that. Even if they made him be in love with the female lead, he should have had the attitude of a long-lived spirit. His love should have been a little obsessive and creepy, and he shouldn't have cared that much about the male lead. He should have seen him as an ant who would soon die and be forgotten by the female lead. He says that in the show, but he doesn't really act like that because he is so jealous of the male lead, like all the time. And it's so petty and weird for him to act so human in this way. I was just wishing constantly that he would act his age, I guess. He's supposed to be hundreds of years old. I'm like, come on, dude. And I thought it was kind of dumb that he just wants to get married and he loves and is jealous exactly like a human would be, instead of exploring how spirits might see love differently from humans. And I just didn't like any of his scenes. He really dragged the story down. Ideally, I think I would rewrite the character to be more of a schemer whose obsession is really just power. That way he could still be a villain, but it would be more interesting to see him have this patience and his meticulous planning to try to steal the throne from Simu. I don't think he needs to be in love with her, and the story would have been better without that through line. Arc 3 is when the male lead leaves the void, kind of giving up on his courtship for a time. He re-enters the mortal world and he goes to the capital, where he gets involved in the politics and social matters there. And a number of characters come in, such as his sister. He's got all these different agents who work for him. There's his relationship with his father. And there's a wonderful plot twist regarding the character Fengji, who I fully believed was Duan Xu's enemy until it was revealed that they were secretly working together all along. That was such a good plot twist. It made me sit up and take interest in the story again. I was completely blown away, and it made me want to go back and rewatch some of the early episodes with this new context in mind. It was such a good twist. Duan Xu once again comes across as a pretty awesome character as he schemes and he plans to achieve his goals in the mortal world. And it was so interesting that I kind of felt like criticizing him for going to the void in the first place, because he had so many people waiting for him and depending on him back in the mortal world. I was kind of like, what are you doing, man? Simu ends up going to the capital herself, where she engages with this character from the Star Haven sect, the Sickly Prophet. And this guy is so much fun. I love this character. He has such a fun personality, and he is surprisingly powerful. Just a very unique individual who has a mysterious serving maid that may or may not actually be a goddess. Simu ends up crossing paths with Duan Xu again, and eventually it leads to her accepting him as a lover, which shocks and delights him. And I was shocked too, because I didn't know in that moment if she would actually accept him or not. So they begin to enjoy their time together, and we come to the fourth arc. The fourth arc is when everything starts to become slow and a bit messy. The cdrama curse of being too long and having too many episodes comes upon this show as well. Yan Ke, the worst character, becomes the main villain of this arc, and so he drags the story down a lot, and with him is this priest character. At first, it seemed like the priest character would be interesting, but then he just turns evil and he becomes boring to watch. Duan Xu is suffering the backlash from sharing his senses with Simu, and he is slowly dying throughout the entire arc. And it really just feels in general that this entire arc could have been and should have been shortened to a few episodes. There are two deaths of side characters, one I liked and one I didn't like. Fengji's death seemed a little unnecessary and bleak to me, and it made the story feel genuinely depressing. And the kid that Simu raised also dies, and he dies this very heroic death on the battlefield, but it felt like a very meaningful death, and it was sad in a way that was well written. But having him die and also having the other guy die just felt like too much tragedy. It was too much sadness. The Prophet and his mysterious maid continue to be a great duo in this arc, and on the spirit side, Jiang Ai and this guy Bai San Xing are surprisingly fun. However, the arc overall felt like a drag. I watched most of the episodes on double speed, and I began to feel reluctant to finish the show, which was very sad because otherwise the show was doing so well. Now we come to the ending. There is a main ending, and then they shot this alternate ending as well, which is 6 minutes long, and it played for me after the final episode finished. In the main ending, Duan Xu dies in Simu's arms, and she grieves him. He is shown to have this strong obsession to get back to her, and that obsession follows her around in the form of a jellyfish. It makes sense in the story, I promise. Simu abdicates the throne, giving her position to the kid, who has now become a spirit, leaving him to be sovereign in the void. Simu then wanders the mortal realm with Duan Xu's obsession at her side. This ending is a mixed bag for me. I liked Duan Xu's death. I felt it was the natural, meaningful conclusion to the story. However, I disliked very much that Simu abandons her throne. Throughout the show, it is shown very clearly that she is uniquely qualified to rule the spirits and that she does the best job. It seemed almost irresponsible for her to leave it, especially to someone so young and unqualified as the kid, who has not been shown to have leadership skills or the ability to rule a place like the Void. Her leaving to roam the mortal world also seemed strange to me because she knows nobody there, and she doesn't have any goals or ambitions, so it just seems sad for her to just wander aimlessly for eternity, unable to sense mortal senses. Duan Xu's obsession is with her, but I don't know what that means. I'm not even sure if he's conscious. He's a jellyfish. The prophet and his maid do mention this idea that there might be hope for a change in the future, but the only thing I can imagine is that maybe Duan Xu could become a spirit, maybe after a long number of years, and then he and Simu could be spirit husband and spirit wife. But that ending seems like it would betray the meaningfulness of his death a little bit. And it just seems to me that they wanted to offset the tragic nature of the ending with a hopeful note, but the hope just seems empty and meaningless to me. It would have been better to embrace the tragic nature of his death and have Simu continue as a ruler, made stronger and better by the memories she made with him. The alternative 6-minute ending has the mysterious maid character show up as a goddess. She waves her hand and turns Simu into a mortal. She brings Duan Xu back to life, and they live happily ever after. It's a literal Deus Ex Machina ending, and it is so rushed that it feels like a happy fever dream rather than a legitimate alternate ending. Overall, I just felt like the creators had a lack of confidence in ending this story, and in trying to please everyone, they will end up pleasing no one. So, Love Beyond the Grave is an interesting story with some great characters that is dragged down a bit by being too long and having an insecure ending. But it's still worth it. I won't rewatch the whole thing again, but I will rewatch certain moments and episodes because Simu is incredible. Long live the Sovereign of Spirits.